All right, y'all ready? Chief Graham, Laura. All right, Anthony.
All right. Appreciate everyone being here, and obviously we here, Jackie and I are going to tag team and talk through some of the budget, have a budget workshop, and just kind of give you highlights and get deeper in the weeds as we need to, and ask away any questions, stop us anytime. So very informal. But I want to start with last night's sort of PowerPoint, just to kind of go hit those highlights just real quick again, and then Jackie's going to, obviously, you already have the 5-year CIP, sort of what's in that. You're probably sick of looking at those projects because you've seen them who knows how many times. But Jackie, have you got who's got the clicker? Keep going, go to the actual personnel side of things, just to stay right there for a second. Obviously, the main thing is, and if you have other direction to give us on, like tax rate, if I don't hear from you, the tax rate's staying the same. We've obviously had some conversations on that, but the tax rate will stay the same. The fees, go back to the fee slide, Jackie, I'm sorry. Let me hit the high stuff, so right there. So from the fee side of things, yes, ma'am.
We want to have a discussion about the solid waste fee.
Okay, all right. All right, so tax rate, I assume everybody's good with holding tax rate the same. If I don't hear otherwise, we're going. On the fees, let's talk a little bit about those, and we'll jump into the solid waste fee also. So right now, we have all the fees staying the same. I may get Jackie talk a little bit, most likely on the solid waste fee and the vehicle fee. We'll hit the solid waste fee. We tend to look at the solid waste fee every year to kind of see how much that we're covering. We're at about 58% of what the total cost is. We pass on the $154 to the resident, but the town picks up the other portion of that. We look at that on a yearly basis to see if we want to adjust that. We have made the assumption, based on some feedback, that we would not adjust that this year. However, let me open it up, and maybe Jackie has some more info. We can dig a little deeper if you like to. Remember, the cost is going to go up as we add new residential customers. It also will go up because with the CPI based on the contract. And I'll stop there, maybe Jackie, and if we need Kevin to jump in and then ask whatever questions or thoughts on that.
Being unusual during the budget process for the board with the adoption of the budget to have a discussion on philosophically what portion of the direct cost associated with residential solid waste pickup we should cover with the fee versus the tax rate. And recently, prior to this board clearly, there was a philosophy that we should work toward covering 100%. I can't do this off the top of my head anymore, but I've got an impressive old folder in my office that shows what this fee has been for each municipality in Mecklenburg County dating back to 2005. I could tell you, if you want to know exactly how much the fee was, I'll go get it. I don't remember what it was before it was 154. Kevin, do you remember what it was before it was? Maybe 132, but don't believe that. I'd go look. It was 154, if memory serves, in FY24, and it wasn't, and we made the election last year to not change it, so it was the exact same dollar fee this next year. Because of the CPI and because of adding residential units, the portion then that we're covering with this fee went down. And so assuming that the number of residential units that we pick up for in FY26 stays the same as we budgeted, we assumed it would, then we'll be covering, as Anthony says, 58%. If there are other conversations you'd like to have about this, we're up to the task. This fee is generating a little over, is it just under or just over $3 million, Patty? 3.3 is just over $3 million. So if you levy this fee next year, our estimate is based on the number of residential customers we expect that would receive this $154 fee on their annual tax bill. We generate 3.3.
I I know we talked about this last year, about rolling it into the tax rate. And I don't know if we want to consider that for this year or not, but I am curious. I do think that's I prefer that. I would like to personally move it into the tax rate. But I'm curious would that be a 4-cent or 3-cent? Like,
There's very little math that I'll do in my head, but remember how we say 1 penny generates about $1.6 million? So if we're trying to cover 3.3, if you'll put a little over 2 cents, then that would cover the 3.3. So a little over 2 cents
To
would.
cover the entire cost or just this portion? So Jackie said if a penny generates 1.6 and the garbage bill is a whole lot higher, the garbage bill is closer to 7 million a year. So what's the ask? If you're just covering this piece or whether you want to cover it all would depend.
I wouldn't want to cover it all right now. I think that's not fair to the residents to do.
I will
want-
speak,
I don't want
let me
confusing.
speak politically. I know there's probably some people who say do that. I hear it, I can talk pros and cons. I will tell you there will be, and I don't get paid to talk politically, but I am. I will tell you that when you do that, some people are going to look at it, they don't see it. I know a fee is a tax. Everybody looks at it that way. Once you roll it into that tax bill, folks maybe on the other side are going to say, you just raised my taxes by so much.
I'd like to express it differently than Anthony, as usual.
I'm going to be very frank.
He's right.
with you.
I wouldn't argue political, not political.
I agree.
To me, there are pros and cons.
Yeah.
So if you get this fee on your annual residential tax bill. So what you're probably doing, what normal humans, I think, do, stereotyping, is you look down, the total amount that I need to write a check for to the county this year is X. Very few people look up and say, this much is the tax, this much is the solid waste fee. They're just looking at the total amount that they're paying. And it would be a miracle if they looked at, oh, this portion's going to Mecklenburg County and this portion's going to Huntersville. It's okay, you can do that, you should. I invite you to consider, and I don't think this is a bad idea, but there are pros and cons, as Anthony's saying politically, there are positives and negatives to me. Please be aware, commercial entities, commercial taxpayers do not pay this fee to us. So if you increase the tax rate townwide 2 cents, then if you're a commercial entity, you got a tax increase, but you didn't get the relief of no longer having to pay a fee. And so commercial entities would indicate they felt a 2 cent tax increase if you cover the 3.3. And let's, please, I know for most people that's 2 cents, but it's probably 2.03 cents or 2.05 cents, something. But so there is, this is fun math for me, it really is. So you could play with a spreadsheet and say, if your home is valued at X, your total amount that you're paying ultimately to Huntersville would go down if you had the fee. But why is that? It's going down because somebody else is paying more.
Yeah, when we talked about this last year, I spent the last year kind of thinking it through, and I've talked to a few business owners, now not every business owner, but I've talked to a few, and all of them were like, no, I'd much rather be completely on board with paying a little extra tax to supplement the fee or whatever. But I would love to hear from folks if you're listening out there.
So remember, the commercial side doesn't get a fee.
Right, I know, but they would pay more taxes.
They would pay
Right,
more taxes.
Right, that's the question I've asked to several business owners, and they've always been in favor of eliminating the fee, and they say they'd be fine with paying the taxes. Now, again, I haven't talked to every business owner, so I invite folks to provide feedback on that.
So I mentioned pros and cons, and thankfully you all don't let me wax poetically frequently about governmental accounting theory. Please be aware, Mecklenburg County distributes sales tax on an ad valorem basis. Ad valorem is made up of the value times the rate. So if you charge more in taxes by not charging this fee, then you would have generated more in assessed, you will have generated more in property tax, to the extent that your property tax levy goes up disproportionate to others, entities in the county that don't change their rate or that don't go up as much as you do. In the following year, theoretically, you'd get a larger percentage of the sales tax generated in the county the following year. I can't tell you that's going to be more money because my crystal ball doesn't tell me what consumer spending is going to be in the next year, but that would solidify for you a larger piece of whatever there is to be distributed amongst the local government. So pros and cons.
Is that something that we could add? So we have a couple of, like the brew on the budget and but I forget all the catchy names. Is that something that we can incorporate into, like with a slide and like ask for feedback, like be proactive at all the events that we're doing to ask for feedback of folks? Because I'd be really interested in hearing from as much as the community as we can.
I would invite you to have Ethan talk about what our technologies are about asking survey feedback.
The key's going to be here is,
You're going to hear from people who feel most strongly about it, positive and negative.
get a strong enough response from it, and has the most impact on commercial. And it has zero impact potentially on the person who, I'm going to pick on my friend, maybe rents Slice House, but whoever owns the building, they pay the taxes. That's who has the impact. So, you just got to think through those, who you're getting the feedback from. If I'm, on the Slice House and I'm picking on Giovanni because friend, he may not care as much because it doesn't really impact him, but the property owner may, as they're going to be paying the taxes. So those are things you just need to think about, that's all. And Jackie's right. I mean, from a, revenue side of things, if we were to put it into the tax rate, depending on what the other towns do, my understanding right now that, I don't know how public they've gone with their budgets yet, but, the managers talk quite a bit on all this stuff. It appears that the county may be looking to raise theirs up slightly, and 2 other towns, for various reasons in Mecklenburg County, looking to raise those taxes. So it just kind of depends on how it all weighs out of whether, we get more of the sales tax pie. But typically, we would.
Think of consumer spending in Mecklenburg County and what sales tax what sales tax applies to. If memory serves, in our FY '26 budget, we propose we're going to get just less than $10 million. That just less than $10 million, 9.95. It's just less than $10 million. The percentage of sales tax in the current year that we're receiving that's generated in all in Mecklenburg County, it's about, if memory serves, it's less than 1.5%. So less than 1.5% is generating for us almost $10 million next year. So a small tweak to that number can make a big impact. But the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, again, if memory serves, make up about 95% of all of the levy. So when they tweak their tax rate, or if their value changes disproportionate to ours, through no action of your own, your sales tax percentage could change, and it feel dramatic, but still, less than 1.5% is going to generate close to $10 million. So there are swings.
We're in the weeds, but just want you to understand all that. Other questions on that before we keep, moving ahead? All right. So vehicle fee, maybe Jackie, talk a little bit about that, just so that folks understand that. I know there's some history behind it, how we use it versus other towns, et cetera, what we specifically use it for, how much it generates, et cetera.
Again, same tables of 20 years worth of tables that I've kept. My understanding is in the late, I'm going to guess 80s, 90s, Mecklenburg County local governments got special authority from the General Assembly to levy a auto fee of up to $30, and that bill would apply on the annual property tax bill for your vehicle. I can't speak to how much before, but my understanding is Huntersville did not choose to levy the fee despite their authority to do so before 2007. So since 2007, auto fees for vehicles in Huntersville have been charged the $20 fee. Huntersville chose to, there was no legal requirement to do so, but they chose to account for that money in a separate special revenue fund to make it clearly identifiable how much revenue they got and what they were spending it on. And so that special revenue fund here has only been spent on transportation-related projects. It might be debt on a transportation project or to prepare intersection improvements on a small intersection. If memory serves, there is a portion of it that we plan to use to fund part of Gilead Road West, which I wouldn't call a small project, in FY '26. There was no legal requirement back then to account for it in a separate fund. I think that speaks well of Huntersville about transparency and willingness to use the fee generated by a specific entity, enterprise, a vehicle fee for a transportation purpose. I think that's great. About a decade ago, 12, 15 years ago, I can't remember, I'll look it up if it's important to you, the state legislature decided to remove municipalities' authority to levy a business license tax. And the replacement revenue stream for that was to effectively create for all municipalities in the state of North Carolina to have the authority to levy that vehicle fee. Interestingly, they also receive the authority to levy a fee up to $30. And so you can levy no fee at all, which many municipalities choose no fee at all, or you can levy a fee of any amount that you change annually with your budget process of up to $30. So our special legislation availability to do that now is effectively null and void because we could have done it through regular legislation anyway. You can make that fee $20 as the way we have since 2007, and if you do, in FY '26's budget, it's going to generate close to $1 million. If you change that fee to a different amount of $20, we'll calculate what that is. A $20 fee generates about $1 million. So theoretically, then, if you decide you want to raise it to the maximum and make it $30, then I would argue $1 million is going to generate $1.5 million.
And then the other revenues here, without getting too far in the weeds on the stormwater fees, is based on, your roof of your house to your concrete driveway, et cetera. So basically, those fees they're based in categories. We use those fees to basically do stormwater improvements throughout town. They're categories of what they charge you based on the number of the square footage of impervious surface. And that's how that's calculated. We are able to set those fees on a yearly basis. They ask us, do we want to adjust those? I can't remember the last time we've adjusted. It's been a few years at least since we've adjusted it. Yeah, so it's been quite some time since we've adjusted those, but those go towards, any type of restoration related to stormwater. Could be even if you're fixing a road up and it was a ditch bank and you decide to put curb and gutter in to stream work, et cetera. So, that's what we use those funds for. Land development fees, if you recall, we took, I don't know, maybe Nick may have been on the board then, I can't remember. We brought in land development services in-house. The county used to provide these services. We brought that in-house in 2019. I should be able to remember that. And those fees are associated when you develop in town to pay for those services. Pays for personnel to provide those services, et cetera. County was doing it. At that time, the board said, look, we want to bring that in-house to be able to provide a better, faster service, a better customer service, et cetera. So we did that in 2019, but those fees go directly towards paying for those services. And then as far as the last one.
Wait a minute. Could I just, on the stormwater fee, we're comfortable with, it sounds like we're going to leave it alone, but we got money to do what we need to do, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's just
And we
what I asked.
continue to partner on projects. We look to partner with the county on some of these projects because these projects are typically not 10,000, 50,000. Some of these can be hundreds, millions.
That's why I was asking.
So as those come up, we look at partnerships, we look at grants. So those are things we work on with related to these funds. So yeah, we don't like this fund balance on stormwater fee to get down to, in the 100,000. We keep it up in the millions so that we can do larger projects as they come about. I'll keep going, but stop me or yell out. The electric rates, we talked a little bit about that. The rates are proposed to stay the same. We're not proposing to change the electric rates. The only thing is REPS rider. I don't know exactly timing. David maybe will tell me when that would come out, but that is renewable energy is what that's about. And that is a small fraction. David, have off the top of your head, maybe you can tell us how many of that? And how many customers? Any questions on the renewable energy rider?
Before we leave this page, can I comment about stormwater?
Yes,
In our
please.
FY '24 audited financial statements, we had about $3.5 million in stormwater fund balance, and we're generating fees of about $1.3 million a year. So we've got we've got more than a year's worth of stormwater fund balance. Could a big project wipe it out? Of course, but that we're okay in stormwater fund balance for now.
So I just,
Just for clarity, you said for the, I'm sorry. For the reps, that was 87 cents that it will be adjusted to?
That's correct. It's 82 cents now.
Okay,
Effective July 1, it'll go to 87 cents
87 cents
per customer per month.
per customer per month. Okay.
That's 5 cents a month, that's 60 cents a year.
Yes.
and David, explain a little bit better an idea besides renewable energy. What is that? You know, what is REPS?
Okay, so REPS is Renewable Energy Portfolio Standards. August 2nd, 2007, Senate Bill 3 was passed, which required any entity that had an electric utility to pay money toward renewable energy portfolio standards. So this money is a pass-through. We collect it from each customer, and it goes on to the power agency, and they use that to invest in renewable energy as they're required to do, as each town is required to do. They do that on the town's behalf.
Thank you. So from the revenue side, I just want to talk through some of those. Maybe now, Jackie, just sort of hit personnel so we can show what the positions again, what we're looking at. I think at the workshop, budget workshop retreat, we talked about maybe looking into school resource officers for elementary schools. I think I heard sort of that feedback from the board. Obviously, we've done, chief and assistant chief have done the homework. We feel that 3 to start out with to serve those, to share those amongst the 6 CMS schools would serve us well. The second item, you've heard this before too, about trying to take some of the services we provide and move those over more into a civilian role. That's what the traffic investigators is all about. We know about the 3 assistant fire chiefs continuing to, convert fire. This is just taking that next step. And then as our parks and programs, et cetera, grow, that's what bullet point number 4 is all about. And then the next 2 positions are related to positions that would move over into the new town hall, so I don't have a seat to put them in. A team member for Ethan's department, and then also code enforcement is just wearing us out, so we need to get another code enforcement officer. That's the 14 positions. Any questions, concerns there? Yes, ma'am.
Not really a question, but I know we hear a lot, and we receive a lot of emails and calls, about code enforcement issues. So I'm curious from planning, how much will that extra position help us be able to respond to those more efficiently?
Extremely, and actually keep up. I mean, to be very blunt, some stuff falls to the wayside because we can't keep up because we're getting more phone calls, and a lot of times this squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if we can have that extra person to stay on top of high grass signs, and as we continue to grow, our violations tend to get more complicated, so we have to spend a lot more time with them. Darius is doing a great job with that. Claudia's doing a good job with the nuisance, but again, there's only so many hours in the day.
You need to hire the sign lady. She's good. She's very good. She helps us out a lot, though.
I have a
Yes, ma'am.
question. In regards to I see the retirement increase. Have you touched on that yet? Where are you going to?
The town has been a member of the local government employees retirement system for a long time, more than a long time. Participation in the retirement system requires that employees pay in 6% of their salary on a pre-tax basis. In my 30 years, that percentage has never changed that I'm aware of in the 30 years. The North Carolina Local Government Employees Retirement System is one of the most well-funded systems in the nation, more than 90% funded. The Board of Trustees annually looks at what percentage the employer should pay. The employer rate has changed, as code for increased, at least 4 of the last 5 years in an effort to maintain the sustainability of that fund. There is a different rate that applies to sworn law versus non-sworn employees. If memory serves, the non-sworn percentage is going up over 1%. I'm gonna guess it's 1.25% next year. I think the sworn is going up. I know it's going up over 1%. I think it's about 1.25 also. And so while employees are paying in 6% of their salary, the employer portion next year is a little over 13% for non-sworn and a little over 14% for sworn to maintain the financial sustainability of that system. And that's not elective, that's not you choosing it, it's what the Board of Trustees tells us municipalities who've been in a minimum number of years all must pay. You're not choosing to make us the system better, it's to participate in that system. The Board of Trustees is telling all local governments what increase they face.
Jackie's going to tell you in a little bit, just about 288,000.
Yes.
That additional cost.
Yes.
In a minute, she's going to kind of go through the costs of these various things, excuse me, on one sheet, but it's roughly 288,000, that cost that we must suck up. And then also on this sheet, you know, we look at COLA and merit. What are other towns doing in our area? The COLA, we a couple years back, previous boards said, hey, we want to move to a COLA-based system also and base our COLA on a fixed time. So we look January to December of 2024. You got to pick a point in time and stick with that point in time. And what is that COLA CPI for all urban consumers? And so this number, 3%, is not a made-up number that Jackie came up with or Anthony comes up with. We follow that sheet. If it says it's 1.1, that's what you see. If it says it's 3%, that's what you see. So it's a fixed point in time. Every year we use, we bring that back, and there's no guessing. Anything to add to that, Jackie?
You might well have thoughts about what the national or local economy might do in the next 12 months to insulate ourselves from the criticism of, oh, we think inflation is going to be 10% next year, so we're going to say CPI is 10%. We don't base this on what we think the economy is going to do next year. To me, it makes it less argumentative if you say our purchasing power has changed by this much over this 12-month finite period. It's easy to remember when we're preparing budget to go to the previous calendar year and see what CPI was. It takes the argumentative factor out of what it might be projecting it in the future and say, we can absolutely defend how purchasing power changed in the previous calendar year's 12 months. And we've done this, I'm gonna guess, 7 or 8 years. Prior to that, we would COLA or merit every other year. It's hard to remember how much COLA has been for 24 months, so there was a suggestion in prior years that we have a COLA element every year. Changing our pay ranges by COLA prevents a lot of gyrations, large moves, if you're going to do a pay study every 3 or 5 years. So that this keeps us from having to make a substantial change on a less routine basis.
And then the merit, we also compare to other towns. We talk on a regular basis to see what other towns are doing there. So if you come back, some towns, like Jackie said, here, we used to do merit, COLA, switch around. Some towns do both, some towns do one. Most towns now do both. There are probably some out there that don't do COLA and they do merit. Typically, what they do is they raise the merit to cover it. That's, so some people like to call it one thing versus the other. But as Jackie said, a few years back, we switched to having not just picking one each other year. We stuck to COLA, and then we had a merit too, and then the ranges would move with the COLA. So what you see, both of them combined is 6%, 3 and 3 each way. And what we're learning from the Mecklenburg counties, the Charlottes, the Davisons, the Cornelius, other towns, is they're in that same range. We're not blowing it out of the water. They're anywhere from, Jackie has the numbers, send them to them, probably 5 to 6.5 with the two combined. Is that a
If memory
Good
serves,
statement.
there's somebody doing a pay study that might even be more than that, but when you implement a pay study, it's not unusual for it to be a higher percentage, but
Jackie? We did a pay study a year-ish ago,
we implemented in FY '25.
and when do we anticipate doing another one? Okay. Okay. So we're thinking of doing them every 2 years? Is that,
And the market may shift that, sometimes that speeds it up sooner rather than later. And we used to break it apart, and we said, maybe that's not the best thing to do with our resources, let's do it all at one time.
yeah, I'd prefer to do it all at one time, and again, to be proactive on that.
Yes, ma'am.
I have this potentially stupid question about the merit increases. Is that automatically for every employee, or is that based on performance and?
Based on performance, and Jackie and/or Laura, if she wants to get up and tell you details on that, it's a point system. And I forgot how, we look at it every year as far as the number of categories, and we adjust it every year. I probably won't do it justice. Laura, you want to give maybe a better detail on what that looks like and how
While
we
she's
do
coming
that?
up, full disclosure, the COLA generally is across the board. That's not a.
Yes, correct.
So we do annual reviews. We have two, I would say, categories of employees and supervisors, have slightly different variations on the criteria that they're judged on. So it's either 12 or 15 categories that are consistent across everyone, attendance, teamwork, cooperation, things like that. And then we also have a goals section. So every year, all employees should have new goals developed. Do they meet their goals? Do they not meet their goals? Were there good reasons that they didn't meet their goals? Things like that. And so we use that, when we know what the final result of this will be, we look at, a standard score that you would automatically receive 3%, and then we try to give department directors some discretion in what that range might look like for them within their departments.
All right, Jackie, you want to, we've talked a lot about the capital stuff. We can go back and look at the capital on that. I mean, we have, I keep using number 26. I don't know if that's the number of capital projects got out there. I'm looking at Stephen's head, maybe to nod up and down. There's so many, I have to go back and count every time, but there's 40 on the list, 40 actually that we have our thing on right now. See, I've lost track. I forgot how many's total on the list, 60 or so?
I think 68.
68 on the list, but 40 in some shape or form that we're touching. It's probably, I'm off because we added all those sidewalks to it, but we can go back and look at those, but we got so many in the hopper in some shape, form, or fashion we're working on. We don't have a lack of projects, that's for sure. But maybe, Jackie, if you can go to maybe the one page that talks about, we're going to be dipping in the fund balance. We have projected to dip in fund balance in previous years. Go to your sheet, Jackie.
Bobby, will you move me to the Excel document, please, sir? The one that's a tab labeled 5725.
So before Jackie gets up and talks you through all these numbers, we are looking to dip in the fund balance, 15.6 million. You're going to say, whoa, hold on, that's a lot. We have a healthy fund balance. I think we have said we're going to dip in the fund balance multiple years, and we haven't yet. I know this may sound negative, I hope we can. But, you know, if we're spending on capital projects and we're doing projects, that's what it's there for. We should be. So I am not worried about this number, about dipping. So I hope Stephen gets all 40 projects done this year. He's not. I wish he could, but he just can't control some of the factors he's dealing with. So if you hear this is a lot dipping in the fund balance, I have no worry at all. If I was worried, Jackie wouldn't be up here helping present it if she was worried. So I'll be quiet and let Jackie take over and kind of run through some of these numbers of what we've talked about, put some numbers behind it.
Our audited financial statements for the most recent year, you have our total fund balance is 80 million. Not all of that is spendable in 1 year. But of that 80 million, we're suggesting with this budget that you potentially dip into that fund balance 15.6 million. I got to stop. I always have something, one more sentence to say about what Anthony said. Many of the projects are construction projects that would be under Stephen's purview. Several of them are Parks and Rec projects that are under Michael's purview. There are a number of those projects that are greenways that we're doing cooperatively with another entity like the county. We don't have control over when they bill us for our portion of that. And so when we get those funds actually spent might not necessarily be 100% within our control. And are we going to go, hey, we'd really like to have that bill now, we want that bill. We pay it when we receive it, not unlike DOT. And so we're obligated to set those funds aside when we agree to pay them, but then we've lost a little bit of control over when we actually pay that bill. So if Anthony's correct, if I felt uncomfortable about spending this level of fund balance, I would say so. On the day I came to work here, we were AAA bond rated, and our total fund balance was 45 million. That suggests to me if you spend 15 of the 80, I'm not real sure that's going to cost us a AAA rating. Having said that, there are several projects in here that I will suggest to you are ongoing. This is not a one-time use of fund balance like the first project on here, Fire Station number 4 Park. If you continue to dip into fund balance every single year, that might not be awesome forever, right? I mean, think about it. You dip in your savings account every year, eventually your savings dry up. So I wouldn't do it every year, but this 1 year I feel decent about it. Our total use of fund balance this year, and if you adopt the budget as presented, is $15.6 million. Part of that is us spending some POW bill to roughly double the number of streets that we pave each year. So rather than only pave the fewer number of streets, let's go knock about double off the list of the streets that are on the list that need to be repaved already. So that's a use of POW bill fund balance. So the lead time on purchasing a fire truck right now is 1,200, 1,500, something crazy number of days. Before we brought the fire department internal into a municipal department, they'd already committed to the purchase of a fire truck. Of the $12,285,475, close to $370,000 of that is the final payment on a truck that was committed 2 years ago. And so we're suggesting that emergency fund balance that we have that is previously budgeted funds to use for a fire department purpose, we use for that. There's roughly $814,000 air pack replacement program in the fire department that we're also taking out of that emergency services fund balance. The equipment that we put on a truck is frequently unique to the compartment size on that truck. And so that accounts for the total $12,85,475 in emergency funds fund balance. That's all fire department related. So of the 13,077 then that we're using in general fund balance, row 11, the first thing is we've recently approved a master plan for Fire Station number 4 Park. There are additional amenities there that we didn't originally contemplate. We have some bonds set aside that we issued last year that we'll use to fund part of the amenities of that park. And if to meet our current estimate of what we believe that park is going to cost. When Michael sends out the RFP, we get a general contractor bid back and know exactly what it's going to cost. We estimate that we're going to need another $4.6 million to fund that park. We're suggesting that come out of our $80 million in fund balance. The projects become appreciably smaller after that. So the intersection at Huntersville Concord Road, Warfield, to initiate What's that, Stephen?
Additional dollars. So a lot of these projects are, like this project here, costs a whole lot more than $250,000. These are just additional dollars to continue.
So the portion of that project we expect to need in FY '26 is just $250. I don't mean to lead you to believe that's the whole project. Very few projects would we get for $250. We budget every year $500,000, $500,000 for the repairs to existing sidewalks. In this budget year, we're budgeting $750,000 just for brand-new sidewalks. So there's two different pots of money. A repair is different than the construction of a brand-new one, so that's what the $750 represents. We talked about different pots that we use toward the contribution of what we'll need for Gilead Road West. Gilead Road West is another example. I really believe that we budgeted the first time for that in August of 16 when I came here. That's going to be a multi-year project. So the general fund portion of what we estimate we'll need for Gilead Road West this year is $500,000. You heard Anthony talk about Townley Connector. The town portion of the Townley Connector we're budgeting for in FY '26 is $750. To the extent that we finalize the agreement with the developer and have costs that we allocate to them, that we expect that agreement to be on a reimbursement basis. So you remember how occasionally Patty will do a budget amendment for you that says, hey, we're going to escrow some funds and we're going to pay out of that escrow? We're not budgeting for those funds that we might get from a developer based on an agreement that we don't have in place yet. And so this $750 is only the town side. To the extent that there's additional funds that we get reimbursed for, you'll see a future budget amendment for that. 787 is, we have, now that we've issued the debt on Town Hall and we issued the bonds in the fall of '24, when we adopted our current year's budget, we know what interest rates were going to be. So we didn't know the exact amount that we would need to budget to pay the new debt service on those two buildings. So when we compare what our FY '25 budgeted debt service was with the additional amount on those two new projects at the interest rates, that's what the 787 is. We have a separate spreadsheet where there are smaller pieces of capital that are not necessarily a big construction project like a road project. Maybe we need some vehicles, the police cars, that what makes up the $1,770,470.
You saw the one pager that was sort of, one side was Parks and Rec last night, and then the other side was the other. That's where that number comes from. That's replacing fences at ball fields, putting in LED lights at ball fields, fixing up buildings at North Meck Park, buying pickup trucks, a field groomer, all those different things that was on that list the other night. That's kind of where that number comes from.
248 makes up 2 planning studies we expect to fund next year. We're looking for what's the longest-term logical solution for the intersection just outside of current Town Hall right here at Huntersville, Concord, Gilead, and 115. So we have allocated money to study again and decide what is the correct solution there.
Well, the corridor, ultimately, we're looking at other solutions. We all know that just a simple little turn lane is not going to solve the world's problems. It's going to probably be useless as soon as we put it in because we're continuing to grow. So are there other solutions, connections, et cetera, that will help the system work better? That's what this study is all about. And then also just piggybacking, the next one is looking at potentially taking the Greenway under Huntersville Concord Road down by Vermillion. And we're going under 21, we'll go under 77, we go under Gilead, and we're looking to go under on Huntersville Concord Road also with the Greenway. So we have to do some studies there to kind of see what are we dealing with, piping, et cetera, road widening, you name it. Yes, ma'am.
So with the intersection study, I was just wondering, is that going to also include, because sometimes the solutions aren't necessarily in the intersection itself, but like maybe elsewhere and changing something elsewhere to prevent more deterring traffic, like we've got with the roundabouts. So is that incorporated into that study?
It will be, because again, we don't know the exact studies. There'll be traffic modeling. Stephen's going to be on board. Whatever consultant we have, we'll be able to bring fresh ideas, fresh thoughts. And we looked at the roundabout last year. We looked at other new roads, expanding, widening roads, and like Anthony said, new connections. So they'll study all of that and maybe come up with things we haven't thought of before.
Sounds great.
So I think roughly 200,000 is related to that study. So I hope I'm not spending 200,000 just to study that intersection. So, or we would not be doing it. And then I want to say 40 or so is for the tunnel study. Maybe less than that, but I think if I recall, it's about 40-some thousand.
I think so too. The row 19 attainable housing, so there's the 150 we budgeted in the current year, we're duplicating that and budgeting a comparable amount in FY '26. May I spend a few minutes on row 20, the HFFA balance? Okay, so for, if memory serves, at least the last 2 fiscal years, and spoiler alert, you should expect it before the end of the current fiscal year at one of your, 3 remaining meetings, we'll ask you to do a budget amendment related to the shortfall in the HFFA fund. So historically, we've budgeted revenue and expense that equaled one another. And the revenue that we have budgeted for the last at least 2-3 years post-COVID in a row, we've not achieved our revenue budget. But we very nearly approached the expense budget. So what happened when we did that? We spent more than we brought in. We didn't have enough cash to cover it. If we generate a negative fund balance overall, if we don't have enough built-up fund balance to cover that, the local government commission will say, what are you doing? If this is a self-supporting fund or it's not, you have to cover the amount that you're not generating revenue in that fund. And so for the last 2 or 3 years in a row, in about April or May or June, we've come to you and said, hey, we need a budget amendment so we don't have a negative fund balance when we turn in our audit report this year. And so our approach is different this year. We're like, wait a minute. If this is an unrealistic revenue budget, why are we adopting an unrealistic revenue budget? So why don't we right-size more closely to what we're actually generating the last 2 or 3 years in revenue? Let's budget that revenue instead of one that has been so unrealistic we haven't achieved it in the last 2 or 3 years. When we sum that revenue and have a comparable level expense, we have a delta. And so effectively what we're doing here is saying, rather than wait till the end of the year when you have absolutely no decision to be made, you're forcing your hand, you don't really have a lot of choice to make in that budget amendment. Let's acknowledge up front that we're right-sizing our revenues to a more realistic number. I can't tell you exactly now that we're going to need a budget amendment of $456,992 next year. I can tell you for the last 2 or 3 years in a row, we've done a budget amendment in about April or May or June to make sure we didn't have a negative fund balance in the neighborhood of $250,300,000. So it's okay for you to budget more in expense than you spend. So all we're asking you to do here is with the original adoption of the budget, acknowledge you're probably going to not make a revenue estimate you haven't made in the last 2 or 3 years, and you're going to cover that, and you're going to acknowledge that with the original adoption of the budget, rather than waiting till year end and saying, oops, now I know ballpark about how much it is, so I'll just transfer this amount now. That's some accounting jargon and lingo, so I'm going to hesitate for a minute. If you have questions you want to, that's specifically why we asked Zach to come in case you have questions about that tonight. This has been discussed by the HFFA committee. If there are questions, please let some of us respond to that, please.
We had a lot of expenses at HSFA over the last few years. Is it possible that that's why there's this negative balance, or is this something that we think is going to continue?
If memory serves, the general fund funded separately the air filtration system, so that would not have been a factor.
Some of this is capital related, smaller capital related too, not just the HVA systems, which are millions of dollars, but it's going to continue to be, I'm going to say smaller capital items, some big capital items, hundreds of thousands, and it's, we are not up back to the pre-COVID numbers of participation either. So we'll continue. I know Zach and the guys are continuing to look at how we can continue to bring more people in the door, continue to partner, but I don't see us breaking even anytime soon. That's Anthony's projection. I hope I'm wrong.
And if you do, you've allowed in the budget to do this, but if you don't need to transfer that money, there'd be no reason for us to transfer it, so we just wouldn't transfer it. This is to cover any overage, and to the extent that you don't have one, we just wouldn't transfer it.
Yeah, hopefully it turns out to be 256,000 or, well, 56,000, but we're acknowledging it now that there's, based on the last couple of years, it's not going to break even. It hasn't, it's not going to break even.
So my question would be, if we were doing 250,000, it's a interesting number, 456,992. I'm not sure exactly where that came from, but that doesn't sort of, I guess I worry a little bit about, well, now we've got an extra 500,000 in the budget, we'll just go buy stuff. I mean, are we throwing that in the budget to go buy more stuff, or are we,
I mean, it has.
how do we get from 250 to 500?
Zach, will you address capital? The amount of capital we have funded in '26, is that not a rather comparable to prior years, 50, 80? I don't remember exactly what the number is.
Yeah, so the prepared capital budget is about comparable to the last few years. Really, where that number comes into play certainly is the delta between the proposed expenses to revenue. In an effort to try and make sure we don't breach, and I may not use the vernacular correctly, but go against the local government bylaws that state that we can't overspend our expense budget, not knowing the unknowns. So with a building that's approaching 25 years old, there's a lot of inner workings that we haven't even touched yet. Piping in the walls, some of the boilers still haven't been touched. So there's unknowns that we're somewhat hedging and preparing in the event that they occur. We wouldn't have to come back every time that something like that happens to necessarily get a budget amendment when those things occur. I don't anticipate it would be necessarily that high, but it's more of an effort to ensure that we have the ability. We do work closely with finance and Bobby, and have changed up some of our cost controls, even coming into this in current fiscal year, from our PO processes and things of that nature. So our ability to just spend certainly is under the guidance of Town of Huntersville staff.
Yeah, we work, Patty and Jackie work, and Bobby work closely with Zach and his team to go through, and really right-size this thing and look at, in great details, look at the capital, the operating, et cetera, and make sure that we're not having to come back at the end of the year for some budget amendment. Now, if the HVAC units go out that we just paid for millions of dollars, this is not going to cover it. But Zach's right, this building's old. It's going to continue to be a problem from a standpoint of we're going to have to spend money. It's just like your house, 25, 30 years old, you're placing roofs, you're doing all that kind of stuff, and same thing with this building. HVAC was just a big ticket, but there are other equipment like, I forgot, I call it the curtain lane, that thing's $300-some thousand more, and there are other items like that that are big ticket items that is not covered in this. These are just probably some of the smaller capital items that we can cover. So Zach can go into more detail if you want to, but.
When we had the PowerPoint last night about what the total budget was by fund, the HFFA total expense budget increased by $10,533. So their expense budget that you adopted in the current year was $3,749,984. And what we're asking you to adopt with this budget is $3,760,492. So their total amount that you're allowing them to spend only grew by $10,000. What's different is what I'm going to term again, right-sizing the revenue estimate, more realistic to what we've generated in prior years. So to the extent that they generate more in revenue, then we've dropped this budget and they generate $3.5 million, you would need appreciably less than this 456, so we just wouldn't transfer it.
I just have one. What are we, or have we had any success, or what are we doing on working on trying to get some more partnerships or sponsorships, or something to help out in that way?
We are. We're definitely reaching out to all the if there's any new nonprofits, if there's any new businesses, which we know obviously are coming into the area, we have individuals that reach out to them directly so that we can work on either getting some form of partnership and or sponsorship in line, and certainly make sure that we're advertising to those groups and those businesses to know that we're there. Everyone is looking at health and wellness, which is great. And so really making sure they understand the full scope of what we offer for a lot of the new businesses, manufacturing, the race teams that come into the area to work on trying to create better and more robust partnerships. So yes, we're continuing to do that as rapidly as possible. And when we do that, if we can get any of those locked in, certainly we work on that agreement with town staff and certainly try to get that to appropriate monetary levels as to what would be for today's revenue expectations. That is one area that really hasn't been touched on. Membership rates really over the last decade have not increased at all. So our biggest revenue generator for the building, and I'm not saying right or wrong, and I'm not saying we need to do one way or the other. What I'm saying is, though, that biggest revenue line item is a line item that we haven't touched. So the only way we can amend that is head count, which we certainly are going all in to continue to do that and service as many different demographics as possible, whether that be families, whether that be seniors, veterans, the like. We are working to try and create those partnerships to continue to bring them in, especially as we see not only the businesses, but certainly housing and some of those opportunities arise as well.
Great question, Commissioner. Zach, what I would do is, I have the potential goals for HFFA for 2026. I don't think all of our board members have it. So what I'll do, I would forward it to the board members.
Perfect.
And I think that the committee has looked at those, and we have not passed them on to the board yet, so we want to make sure the committee, who kind of looks over this on a more regular basis, are okay, and then Zach, Bobby, whoever can ship that out to the full board. Jack, you keep rolling, and, yeah, go ahead.
Bobby, before we leave this, will you hover over B11 through B20? I'd like to illustrate of that $13 million, what portion we've just discussed. So it would not be, and the $4.6 million, that's probably a little bit unusual for us to take a project that size out of the original budget, but that shows you how we're spending $10 million of the $13 million out of fund balance. So if you feel pretty good about that, to me, those are either capital or several of them are one-time. Once you do the two studies in the planning department, to me, that's a non-recurring item. I don't feel any hesitation at all about taking those items out of fund balance. I wanted you to see what portion that was. Thank you, sir. If you'll scoot down this spreadsheet, certainly I like this spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet was the basis for preparing our.
Jack, hold on for 1 second. I think Commissioner Bergsman had a question.
Hey, just one thing. I just want to make sure, because I know for the attainable housing line, that doesn't have a lot of detail. I want to make sure that the board had, kind of the allocations to date from this current fiscal year. If you have that information of how that money is being currently spent in our budget.
I think Bobby can probably come up and tell us about how much we spent, but, we are looking at, and while Bobby's maybe coming up, we are partnering in multiple different ways. We just did a partnership, closed on a couple parcels with Habitat May 5th, 6th, Emily? I think, so those two properties closed. Obviously, we're working on a co-op. We just did an extension. We had to do some extension on that. We've got Walter Street that a road improvement that's sort of connects to that property. So we had to do an extension on that. So we just modified an extension on the co-op property. I'll stop there. Bobby can tell you sort of how much we've probably spent already in the current fiscal year. But these dollars are to $150,000 not going to do a lot, but we're able to take that and do partnerships and do some different things that will allow us to take this money a lot further than what it may look like on the sheet.
Yeah, and I don't have the exact number, but the housing needs assessment that we're doing with the School Government Development Finance Initiative, they're doing not only a housing needs assessment, but they're doing an analysis of town properties for potential affordable housing targets. So that is coming out, and I think the total on that is, I don't know, Patty, exact number, but that was around 45, I think, 45, 50. It may actually be less, but, and then we also had a pot of money from the 150 that we were looking to use for a piece of property that we were looking to acquire, but we got the appraisal back on that piece of property. It's a little bit less than we anticipated, and certainly less than the person who was willing to sell it was looking for. So we've not pulled the trigger on any of that due diligence money to do a phase one and do some of the home inspections and other things that we would have done. But we were looking at using the funds to not count against the grant that we got for lot acquisition, because it's a lot more complicated. And given the some of the uncertainty with federal grants right now, we didn't want to spend something and have to give it back. So we were looking at that as really kind of like an opportunity cost fund, so that we could use that to investigate properties and let us know what we're getting into. So we're not making an investment, and then we've got kind of a money pit that we're putting things into. We can predict and know if we can find the appropriate partners, what we're looking for affordable housing.
All right, Jackie, you back. While Jackie's coming up, she told you about the first one. We talked about that one a few minutes ago on the retirement percentage. These are the numbers for the various personnel that we went over a little while ago, from assistant fire chiefs to the crash scene investigators to the school resource officer. So those are, we just didn't have the numbers in front of you, but those are the numbers associated with those 4 line items.
This spreadsheet is not about trying to balance the budget. It's about trying to describe for you what are the things that theoretically you're using fund balance for. For crash scene investigators, if you told Barry and Brian tonight, we're approving those. You go out and find you some people. I don't think they're going to have people on the payroll by July 1st, so it takes some time to fill those positions and do all the background that has to happen. And so that's what we estimate they would cost in a full year, but we're not going to be able to spend all of that money. But the increase in solid waste, I bet you spent. To the extent that you chose a different merit percentage than 3%, you choose something less than 3%, then it won't cost $957 per. It won't cost $957 in merit. If you decide you want to choose something more, that's the percentage that we estimate merit will have an impact on us. Now, it is 100% argumentative. Our fund balance is one pot of funds, so I can't tell you this part is coming out of the this section of fund balance. So there are other increases in the budget than these, but if you ask me to attempt to justify in my head or in my mind what we're doing with that 13 million use of fund balance, this is a Jackie list. That's all this is. If there's something on here you feel strongly about that you don't want to fund, now would be a great time to tell us to take it out. From this point forward, as the presentation last night showed you, we're going to do several things. We're getting together tonight, open dialogue about budget. We'll meet with citizens on May 12th offsite, Primal. 6 o'clock. We'll do this again in here, something very similar, on the 19th. On the 20th, the citizens are invited to come and speak at a public hearing and have that officially entered to the record. We'll have a public hearing on the budget that night. You cannot adopt until after you have a public hearing. Historically, what will happen after that, we'll have as many budget workshops as you feel like you need to feel good about what's in this budget. What will happen then on June 3rd is we'll create a budget ordinance, which is where you will actually hold your hand up, vote, and set the tax rate for the next year. And so these workshops are all about you helping us figure out this should be in, this should be out. If it's brilliant the way it's prepared, we'll take those accolades and we'll go prepare an ordinance based on this. I would recommend that not be done until after you hear from the public about the budget, but this is a point to me, dialogue. Hey, Jackie, did you include this? I wanted to fund this. Hey, I'm not wild about this one. Why don't we delay that one?
And if there are things that you think of, as after you've heard this, hey, well, I would like to consider adding this position or that, talk to us, and there may be ways to incorporate it in here. Obviously, first thing we would tell you is if it's 15.6 million, adding a position is not going to, drive that up a ton if that's what you decide to do. Just let us know what you're looking at, if there are things you want to pull out, you don't think we're ready for. I'm just picking on something. We're not ready to do the crime scene investigators or the 3 resource officers. If you want to pull that out and hold that off, just give us guidance, tell us what you want to do on these things, or if there are things that we need to be looking at adding. Please let us know. We have time. One thing I will say, one last thing I will say, I know Jackie will, want to punch me in the gut after I say this, but I just need to say it. So Jackie said we're about 80 million or so in fund balance. Now, that was 24. Obviously, I imagine that will be higher when we get our next audit. I don't know what that number is, but I'm sure it'll be considerably higher. So when I tell you I'm not worried about the 15.6 million, I'm comfortable with what Jackie is proposing here, and I'm sure she is too. So I'll leave it at that in case she comes over and gives me the gut punch.
I feel, I feel really good about our revenue estimates, and to the extent that you are not okay with Jackie or Patty's revenue philosophy, let's change it. But this is what I have to say about that. There are a couple of revenues that I think are a little volatile. I feel pretty good that the county has given us an assessed value. The tax bills that will go out in a little over 60 days are based on a value that was set January 1. Once you decide what the rate is, I feel pretty strongly about what our tax levy is going to be. I feel good about it. The county, I think, will be good at telling us what our assessed value was January 1 of this year. So I feel decent about that. Sales tax worries me. I hand-wring over it all the time. I don't like being exceptionally optimistic about sales tax because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 15, 12 months about sales tax. What's consumer spending going to do? I don't know what I don't know. And so assuming that there's not going to be a recession is just not my bailiwick. If I take too rosy a view of sales tax and we don't meet that estimate, then by design, not unlike what we just described at HFFA, then you will have theoretically used some fund balance without having budgeted for it, and that just sounds like, that I just don't know a negative enough word. To me, I just don't want to be a part of that. Another large generator of revenue in the last couple of years, since the Fed raised interest rates, I got zero control over what interest rates are. I can tell you, because I'm into it, I can show you the dots chart of what really smart Federal Reserve Board governors predict interest rates are going to be and what pace they're going to change. Economic factors will happen, and they'll raise or they'll lower, and I have absolutely no control over that. So just like sales tax, if we budget that number too high, in the year COVID happened, and they dropped interest rates very quickly, we didn't make our sales tax, we didn't make our investment earnings estimate, and I was mad as fire. And then when the ARPA money came and they said, well, we're only going to give you ARPA for revenue, for lost revenue, I lost more than $1 million in investment earnings because somebody changed the interest rate. I had no control over that. And oh yeah, we're not counting that. To me, I'm not telling you that I don't feel good about the revenue estimate for investment earnings. I said all that to say there are revenue estimates that you don't have much control over and I have less. And so for you to take too rosy a picture, I want you to sit up here. I want you to struggle over the decision, is X project worthy of us spending our fund balance on? So when you spend it without having taken action, that's not a good day for Jackie. I don't think that's the way you ought to be spending fund balance. It ought to be purposeful, and you make a good decision and feel good about it, not, oh, how'd that happen?
I'd like to jump in here about a position. We are starting with Davidson's arborist for just 12 hours a month, and I can think of at least 2 departments that would have some interest in this position as well. So I just wanted to float that for everyone's consideration. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in here, Anthony or maybe Brian, anybody?
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask if you know what that dollar amount would be or what that would look like.
Bobby make. I know Bobby's probably closer to this. You know what the total dollar amount on that, Bobby, or Jackie, didn't we get what Davidson's paying the arborists? I thought I saw a number on that. Is it all in 100, or was it that high?
I've asked for a copy of the job description, and they commented that they would give me the range, and unless I got it today while we've been in here, I don't have it yet, so I'm not sure.
Probably. I had to guess all in is probably somewhere in 80 to 100. It's just a guess, right now without, but we'll get that information. We just started using Davidson's just to kind of help us dip toe in the water, help us with some of the problems, to help us with some solutions, i.e. like maybe a better tree. I'm being very simplistic, but a better tree, that we place near the sidewalks, or based on, all the different factors. I mean, we are replacing, if that person could just fix that one problem, moving forward, she would be worth maybe millions of dollars, not, 100,000. So, things like that. And that's just a very simple example, but we have sometimes that developers decide to bump into or disturb buffers or knock up against a tree, and the first thing they want to know is, are they killing this tree? Is it going to die? Different things like that. Well, Brian and I could probably walk out there and guess, but that's no good. The property owner don't want to hear that. They want to, see some type of assessment. Do you need to do some fertilizer injections, at the root ball to help keep this tree living, or is it going to die, and what should we replace it with? I'm just giving you a couple little small baby items, but could we use arborists? Yes. Are we using one for a small period of time right now? Yes. We would just need to define that, get a job description, determine how to best use that, and we are working towards that now, because I know Jackie's asked for that, Bobby's asked for information. I know I think Brian and them may even be looking at a tree study or something. So if this is something that the board sees additional value in, we're already dipping our toe in that water, then obviously we would just need to budget for that. And I just gave you a round over all-in number.
I was going to ask what kind of things arborist does for a town, and you filled some of that in.
And that was just a baby.
Okay.
Dipping in. I know we got a whole list of things that I'm sure Bobby and O'Brien or Jackie probably can do better at than me, but I could list 4 or 5 things just off the top of my head. But those are just 2. The one with the sidewalk and has a major impact. If we could really figure out a way to solve that and what type of tree and make sure that's what we're planning, that in a long haul would save tons of money.
Yeah.
So the one from Davison, we're using how much right now? 12 hours a month? Okay, which isn't a ton. I got you.
And we are gauging the use of that person. We just started, in the last couple of weeks? Maybe you can kind of give, Bobby can comment, or Brian, on what he is, just doing for us just in that little small amount of time. And what do you anticipate? And you be honest, if you don't think, I think this board is well enough, if you don't think we need this person, say it.
No, and it's good. It's really, like you said, just dipping our toes in. It's really for public education. They've got to ask an arborist question. So we're going to try to get a program similar to that up and running here. It's not going to be field work. He's not going to be out there evaluating trees and those types of things. And when we do need that, as you guys know, you've been called in on plenty of things. Hey, these guys have ruined this buffer behind my house. What do we do? So that's there constantly. So
I'm sorry, just so I'm clear, the person that we'd be looking
borrowing
at?
from Davidson's just for education.
Okay, but our arborist
Be
would
something different.
go out on site. Okay, I thought you said they wouldn't go on site. And you feel that we've got enough work?
Oh, there's plenty of work to do.
You're on record.
I think I said we're getting some technical assistance, but really the education piece is what he's done a lot in Davidson.
Correct.
How lending that service to us as well.
Right.
I got you.
With that resident education.
Okay, thank you.
I think the technical piece, Brian, stay. I think the technical piece is probably pretty important because, now when developers go to a site, they bring their own arborist, and then we just kind of trust that what their arborist is saying is correct.
It's not always an arborist, sometimes it's a surveyor.
Right.
You get different, yeah, they could, if we had someone on staff, we could really comb through our ordinance a little bit more, make it a lot sturdier, give better criteria, so how we evaluate these trees when there's a site out there. There's a number of things that we can do. And all that takes time, not to mention tree assessments.
Right,
everywhere.
yeah.
When does our agreement with Davidson expire?
Great question.
Okay. Okay. So could we, for the purpose of maybe considering during the arborist, maybe consider doing like a half-year start, like we were doing with Ethan's position?
If we are definitely giving them a seat, I would probably recommend that because I just don't have anywhere to put him or her. But yes, we could do that. It's up to the board.
A reason to maintain a healthy fund balance is to put you in a position to be able to make decisions outside of the original budget process, like say add 18 firefighters in December of a year, or to add a position mid-year or at any point in the year that's not necessarily with the original adoption of the budget.
No different than we're going to be looking at nonprofits are not in this budget because we're doing that at a later time, just like we've done in the last couple of years. So that is not funded in this budget. We will be coming back to talk to you about those as we get those requests, et cetera. So no different, as Jackie's right. We've done half year, we've waited to January, and if the need's there, no different than if we are continuing to lose police officers and everybody else went up on their range by a ton and we are just going in a hole, I have no problem coming back to you mid-year and saying, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we need to do something. We have done that before. So Jackie's right. That's why we have a healthy fund balance to be able to address these needs as they come up. Or if a big sinkhole goes out on a town street, we have money to do that, so.
Do we have the opportunity to extend that agreement with Davidson? Like, is this a one-time thing, or can we extend the agreement, or is this a one-time thing? Sure.
And they may come back, and didn't mean to interrupt, Bobby. They may come back and say, you're using too much of his time, and you need to go do your own thing. So they were gracious enough to work with us on a trial basis. And so it could be that they say, it's not working out. We need all of his time.
So it sounds like if Davidson can keep one busy, given their size, we probably could keep one busy.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Easy to find? I know we're struggling with police officers. I don't know what the pool of arborists.
We know.
No, we know where to get one.
Good, because
Rusty Knox is not listening.
Davidson has struggles some,
Davidson,
but
two now.
they have struggled some, but they have been able to keep the one they have now. So could be. It just depends on timing.
So when the board just ponder on it, maybe having one starting in the half year, like we're doing the other half position, and then,
I mean, if there's I don't need a vote or anything, but if there's enough head nods to say, just put a half year in here, we'll figure out what that number is, we'll do our research, and we'll put a half year in here and move on, but that's
I
up to
have
you.
one question, just for clarity. Are we thinking this would be a time-limited position or something that would, well, depending on future boards, continue in the future?
like a full-time
Okay.
staffer, beginning in, well, not beginning in January, but hiring would begin in January, I guess, and then after
Okay.
that.
And then just one other quick question. You said Brian, as in planning, and did you say another department or just?
Michael?
Or Parks
Yeah,
and Rec.
probably
Oh, Michael
Parks
J.
and-
Cox.
I don't even know, Kevin, if you would be interested in that, because I know y'all fix so many sidewalks, right? Because of the street trees buckling the sidewalks, and maybe that you know, is
Remember,
something
don't ask engineering. If you eliminate the tree, we wouldn't have it.
He'll be out with a
It wouldn't
bulldozer.
affect the sidewalk. I'm kidding. Just kidding.
Don't say anything, Mr. Trot.
If you're going to be funny about
But
it,
this would be somebody reporting to planning department.
if you're going to be funny about it, you probably want to invite David Lucor to the table, too.
Oh, we got to throw him under the bus, too.
These are the bane of his existence, yeah.
He likes bushes, no trees.
So
Okay,
anyway,
but I will
this-
say, an arborist could advise on the trimming to not be in the way of power lines, et cetera. So,
Facts.
Yep.
Again, somebody reporting to the planning department, right? Probably.
We'll figure out who he or she needs to report to. Most likely, yes, but we'll figure it out.
Right, board ponder on that and then
Maybe to Stephen.
ask for your nod later.
While we're on positions, Anthony and I had a very productive meeting this morning with County Manager Diora, the incoming county manager, and some other key players in regards to veteran affairs. And we made some progress, and I think we're going to be coming to the board asking if we can partner with the county as far as a position. We know what the base salary is, but then when you have to add the benefits and things of that nature in, so we may be coming to ask would the board support a partnership with the county as far as a veteran service officer.
So we'll do some research on that. Was a very productive meeting. The goal is to make sure we have a VSO in our facility 5 days a week. And there may be some partnership opportunities there. That if it was to occur, if it does occur, there would be a half-year position too. I don't have anywhere to put him or her, so it would ultimately be the same type thing, but ultimately to have someone up here 5 days a week to basically provide services to vets. And there's a whole host of services. I won't even pretend to get into all those, and we don't have enough time for Edwin to talk about all those. But he could do it justice, not me. But that's something we're looking at, a partnership that probably in the range of, if I had to just arrange for a half a year, maybe a cost of $20,000 to $25,000. Our portion of the cost up here. That's probably what we're looking at. That's for half a year. So more to come on that. Commissioner Quarles did a great job, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that as we get further into that. Do that justice enough?
Yes, sir.
That's, Jackie, anything else to add? I mean, we can talk about whatever you want, get into whatever weeds you want, but that's what we want to do, just get feedback, see if there's things we're missing, things you want to add. Obviously, we got a lot more time, think this through. We've got, as you see here before you, we've got other opportunities to hear from public, to present to the public, 2 opportunities we'll be presenting. Obviously, we have a budget public hearing coming up, opportunity for folks to come speak and hopefully show up, and then look to adopt it, hopefully on June 3rd. Anything else to add, Jackie? And I must, one thing I failed to say that I should always start out with is, obviously, again, I didn't do this. All these people out in the room did this. What Jackie, Patty, Bobby, all the department heads is what, made this happen, not me. So, again, kudos to them. Thanks to them for bringing this together and being able to provide this information to you all. So that's all I got. I'm good if you're good.
Good, anybody else? All right, I think we're done. Yay.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, everybody, and thanks